Imagine a boy vanishing into a mirror in 1884, leaving no trace, only to reappear decades later in a photograph that shouldn't exist. My name is your name, and I'm diving into the chilling mystery of my own disappearance, a story that defies time and reality. Stay with me as I uncover the truth behind the mirror that stole me and the photograph that brought me back. Hit that subscribe button, and let's unravel this enigma together. My name is Thomas, and in 1884, I was just 12 years old, living in a quiet English village. My family's cottage was modest, with creaky floors and a single, ornate mirror in the parlor. That mirror, framed in dark oak, always felt off. It was a gift from my great-uncle, a man who dabbled in things no one spoke of. I'd catch my reflection in it, but sometimes it didn't move the way I did. It lingered, or blinked when I didn't. My parents laughed off my fears, calling it childish imagination. But I knew something was wrong. One rainy afternoon, I stood before it, closer than ever. The glass seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. I reached out, my fingers grazing the surface. A cold jolt shot through me, and the world went black. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the parlor anymore. I was nowhere. The mirror had swallowed me whole. Inside the mirror, there was no light, no sound, just a heavy, suffocating stillness. I felt like I was floating, yet trapped, my body weightless, but my mind screaming. Shapes moved in the darkness, shadows that whispered my name. They weren't human, but they knew me. I tried to scream, but my voice was gone. Time didn't exist here. Seconds stretched into years, or maybe it was the other way around. I saw glimpses of my village through the glass, like watching a play from behind a curtain. My parents searched for me, their faces pale and desperate. I pounded on the invisible barrier, but they couldn't hear me. The shadows laughed, their voices like rustling leaves. I was a prisoner in a world that shouldn't exist. Days, weeks, or centuries passed. I couldn't tell. All I knew was the mirror's grip was unbreakable. Then something changed. A faint light pierced the darkness, and I felt a pull, like a rope tugging at my soul. The shadows hissed, their grip tightening, but the light was stronger. I was yanked forward, my body dissolving into fragments. When I came to, I was lying on cold stone, gasping for air. But the world around me wasn't mine. The air smelled of coal and iron, and strange machines roared in the distance. I stumbled to my feet, my clothes tattered, my hands trembling. A man in a top had stared at me, his camera flashing like lightning. I tried to speak, but my voice was a croak. He shouted something about a ghost boy and ran off. I looked around, no mirror, no village, just a city I didn't recognize. I was free, but lost in a time that wasn't my own. The city was London, but not the London I knew. It was louder, dirtier, filled with towering buildings and horseless carriages. I wandered the streets, invisible to most. People passed through me, their eyes blind to my presence. I was a ghost, or something close to it. Hunger gnawed at me, but I couldn't eat. I found a newspaper. It said 1924. 40 years had passed, yet I hadn't aged a day. My reflection in a shop window confirmed it. I was still 12, frozen in time. Panic set in. Where was my family? My home? I returned to the spot where I'd appeared, searching for answers. The man with the camera was gone, but his photograph would haunt me. I didn't know it then, but that image would be the key to everything. I spent days, or was it weeks, trying to piece together what had happened. The mirror's pull lingered in my bones, a constant reminder of where I'd been. I found a library, its shelves towering with books on the occult. One spoke of mirrors as portals, gateways to realms beyond our own. The words chilled me. Had my great-uncle known? I read about rituals, about objects binding souls to other worlds. The mirror in our parlor wasn't just glass. It was a trap. I needed to find it, to destroy it, but it was long gone. My village was miles away, and I had no money, no way to get there. I felt the shadows watching me, even in this new time. They weren't done with me yet. One night, I saw the photograph. It was pinned to a board in a crowded market, labeled the Ghost Boy of London. My face stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed, captured in that fleeting moment of my return. The crowd whispered about a boy who appeared from nowhere, then vanished again. I wanted to scream that I was here, that I was real, but no one would believe me. The photograph was my only proof, my only link to the world I'd lost. I stole it, clutching it like a lifeline. The image was blurry, my form half-transparent, but it was me. I didn't know how it existed or why, but it felt like a message. The mirror had let me go, but only partway. I was still tethered to it, somehow. I began to dream of the mirror again. In my sleep, I saw it surface, rippling like a pond. The shadows called to me, their voices sharper now, angrier. They wanted me back. I woke in alleys, shivering, the photograph still in my hands. I noticed something new. In the background of the image, there was a faint outline of a mirror. It was the same one from my parlor, its frame unmistakable. How had it followed me? I tracked down the photographer, an old man now, living in a cluttered studio. He remembered me, his hands shaking as he spoke. He'd seen me appear from thin air, he said, right in front of that mirror. He'd sold it years ago, to a collector of oddities. My heart sank. The mirror was out there, waiting. The collector's name was Elias Blackwood, a man obsessed with the supernatural. I found his estate on the outskirts of London, a crumbling mansion filled with strange artifacts. He welcomed me, his eyes gleaming with recognition. He knew about the mirror, about its power. He called it a soul cage, a relic from a forgotten time. He'd bought it from a dealer who claimed it was cursed. Blackwood didn't believe in curses, but he believed in me. He showed me the mirror, locked in a glass case. Its surface pulsed, alive with malice. I felt it pulling at me, whispering my name. Blackwood wanted to study me, to use me in his experiments. I refused. I had to destroy it, no matter the cost. That night, I broke into the case. The mirror's surface was cold, its edges sharp enough to cut. I raised a hammer, ready to shatter it, but the glass fought back. It glowed, burning my hands, and the shadows surged forward. They clawed at me, dragging me toward the glass. I screamed, fighting with everything I had. The photograph fell from my pocket, landing face up on the floor. Its image glowed, a faint light pushing the shadows back. I don't know how, but the photograph was protecting me. I swung the hammer with all my strength, and the mirror cracked. A deafening wail filled the room, and the world spun. When I woke, I was back in 1884, in my parlor, the mirror in pieces at my feet. My parents rushed in, tears streaming down their faces. They thought I'd been gone only minutes, not decades. The photograph was still in my hand, its edges worn but intact. I hid it, terrified of what it meant. The mirror was gone, its fragments swept away, but I felt its presence lingering. I tried to forget, to live as if nothing had happened. But the dreams never stopped. The shadows were weaker now, but they were still there, watching. I grew up, left the village, and buried the photograph in a tin box. I thought I'd escaped. I was wrong. Years later, in 1924, I saw the photograph again, published in a London paper. It was the same one, unchanged, my 12-year-old face staring out. The mirror's curse wasn't broken, it was waiting. 11. I was a grown man now, living under a new name, trying to outrun my past. The photograph's reappearance shook me to my core. How had it surfaced again? I tracked down the newspaper's editor, a skeptic who thought the image was a hoax. He'd bought it from an auction, no questions asked. The trail led back to Blackwood's estate, now abandoned. I broke in, searching for answers. The mansion was a ruin, its walls covered in strange symbols. In the basement, I found the mirror's frame, empty but intact. It hummed with a faint energy, like a heartbeat. The photograph had been pinned to a wall, surrounded by notes in Blackwood's handwriting. He'd been trying to summon me back, to trap me again. The shadows weren't done with me. They never would be. 12. I burned the frame, hoping to sever the connection. The fire roared, unnatural and green, and the shadows screamed in my mind. I fled, clutching the photograph, my only proof of what I'd endured. I began to research, diving into old texts about mirrors and curses. One book spoke of anchor objects, items that tethered a soul to a cursed relic. The photograph was my anchor, I realized. It had saved me, but it also bound me to the mirror's power. I couldn't destroy it, It was part of me now. I hid it again, this time in a bank vault, locked away from the world. But the dreams grew worse. The shadows were angry, their voices a chorus of rage. They wanted the photograph, and they wanted me. 13. By 1930, I was paranoid, jumping at every reflection. I avoided mirrors, covering them in my home. But the shadows found other ways, windows, water, even polished metal. They whispered of a ritual, a way to free myself. I found a scholar, a woman named Clara, who studied the occult. She believed me, her eyes wide as I showed her the photograph. She recognized the mirror's curse, calling it a temporal prison. The shadows were entities, she said, feeding on trapped souls. The photograph was my only weapon, but using it would come at a cost. Clara taught me the ritual, a dangerous blend of symbols and blood. I was terrified, but I had no choice. The shadows were closing in, their presence stronger every day. 14. We performed the ritual in an abandoned church, its walls lined with candles. I held the photograph, my hands trembling as Clara chanted. The air grew heavy, the shadows swirling around us. The photograph glowed, burning my fingers, but I didn't let go. The shadows fought, their voices deafening, but Clara's words were stronger. The light from the photograph grew blinding, and I felt myself being pulled apart. I saw flashes of 1884, of the mirror, of my parents' faces. Then silence. I woke alone, the photograph charred but intact. Clara was gone, her fate unknown. The shadows were quiet, but I knew they weren't gone. The ritual had weakened them, but the curse lingered. I was still tied to the photograph, forever marked. 15. I moved to America, hoping distance would help. It didn't. The photograph followed me, appearing in my bags, my desk, my dreams. I tried to live a normal life, but the shadows were always there, waiting for a crack in my resolve. I became a photographer myself, hoping to understand the power of images. Every picture I took felt like a defiance of the curse, a way to reclaim my life. But the shadows were patient. They whispered in quiet moments, promising to drag me back. I began to see them in my photographs, not in the images themselves, but in the reflections they cast. The mirror's power was fractured, but not broken. I knew I'd never be free, not completely. The photograph was both my salvation and my prison. 16. In 1950, I saw the photograph again, this time in a museum exhibit on unexplained phenomena. My 12-year-old face stared out from a glass case, labeled as a mystery. I stood there, an old man now, my heart pounding. The curator had no idea where it came from, only that it felt wrong. I wanted to smash the case, to burn the photograph, but I couldn't. It was my anchor, my proof of existence. I left it there, hoping it would stay buried, but the shadows followed me home. They were weaker now, their voices faint, but they were still there. I began to write my story, every detail, hoping it would free me. It didn't. The photograph was out there, and so was the curse. I was running out of time. 17. By the 1970s, I was frail, my body failing but my mind sharp. The photograph appeared again, this time on a television show about the paranormal. The host called it the Ghost Boy image, a relic of a forgotten time. I watched frozen, as they debated its origins. They didn't know the half of it. I contacted the show, begging them to destroy it. They laughed, thinking I was a crank. The shadows grew bolder, their whispers now screams. I saw them in every reflection, their forms clearer than ever. I knew what they wanted, the photograph, and me with it. I tracked it down to a private collector, a woman who believed in its power. She refused to give it up, calling it her treasure. I was desperate but powerless. 18. I broke into her home, driven by fear and desperation. The photograph was there, framed on her wall. I grabbed it, the shadows roaring in my ears. I ran, not knowing where to go. The collector chased me, screaming about curses and fate. I stumbled into an alley, the photograph burning in my hands. The shadows were everywhere now, their forms solid, their eyes glowing. I tried the ritual again, alone this time, using the photograph as my focus. The light flared, but it wasn't enough. The shadows dragged me down, their touch like ice. I felt myself fading, my body dissolving. The last thing I saw was the photograph, glowing in the darkness. I was back in the mirror's world, trapped again. This time, the shadows were different. They didn't taunt me, they studied me. I was their prize, their eternal captive. But the photograph was still with me, its light faint but present. I clung to it, my only hope. I began to see glimpses of the world outside, moments from different times. I saw my parents in 1884 weeping. I saw Blackwood in 1924 laughing. I saw Clara in 1930, her face grim as she chanted. The photograph was showing me my life, my curse. I realized it wasn't just an anchor, it was a key. If I could use it, I could escape again. But the shadows were watching, waiting for me to try. I had to be smarter this time, stronger. I don't know how long I was in the mirror this time. Time meant nothing. But the photograph's light grew stronger, guiding me. I focused on it, pouring my will into its glow. The shadows fought, but I was different now. I'd lived a lifetime, seen the world change. I wasn't just a boy anymore. I chanted Clara's words, the ones I'd memorized decades ago. The photograph burned, its light searing the shadows. I felt the world shift, the mirror's grip loosening. I was pulled forward, the darkness fading. When I opened my eyes, I was in a park, the photograph still in my hand. It was 1984, 100 years since I'd first vanished. I was old but alive. The shadows were gone for now. The world of 1984 was alien to me, bright, loud, and full of machines I couldn't understand. I was an old man, but the photograph kept me tethered to my 12-year-old self. I hid it again, this time in a safe deposit box, praying it would stay buried. The shadows were quiet, but I knew they weren't gone. I spent my days researching, trying to understand the curse. I found others like me, people who'd encountered cursed objects. Their stories were different, but the fear was the same. The photograph was my burden, my proof of a life stolen. I wrote letters to historians, to occultists, begging for help. Most ignored me, but one responded, a young man named Daniel. He believed me, and he wanted to help. 22. Daniel was a researcher, obsessed with the supernatural. He studied the photograph, his eyes wide with wonder. He called it a temporal artifact, a bridge between worlds. He thought the mirror's curse could be broken, but it would take a final ritual, one more dangerous than the last. I was tired, my body failing, but I agreed. We prepared in secret, gathering materials from forgotten texts. The photograph was the key, but it was also the danger. If we failed, the shadows would claim us both. We chose a remote cabin, far from mirrors or reflections. The air was thick with tension as we began. The photograph glowed, its light unsteady. The shadows stirred, their presence stronger than ever. I was ready to face them, one last time. The ritual was grueling, each step a battle against the shadows. They fought harder than ever, their forms solid, their voices deafening. The photograph burned, its light flickering. Daniel chanted, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. I felt the mirror's pull, stronger than before. The shadows wanted me, but they wanted the photograph more. I held it tight, refusing to let go. The light surged, and the shadows screamed. I saw flashes of my life. 1884, 1924, 1930. All the moments the mirror had stolen. The photograph was breaking apart, its edges crumbling. I knew this was it, my last chance. The shadows lunged, but the light held them back. I felt myself fading, my body dissolving into light. When I woke, I was alone. The cabin was empty, the photograph gone. My hands were young again, my body that of a 12-year-old boy. I was back in 1884, standing in my parlor, the mirror whole before me. But something was different. The shadows were gone, their presence erased. I smashed the mirror before it could pull me in again, its fragments scattering across the floor. My parents found me, their relief overwhelming. I didn't tell them what had happened. No one would believe me. The photograph was gone, but its memory lingered. I was free, but I'd lost a lifetime. I vowed to live differently, to never trust a reflection again. The curse was broken, but at a cost I'd never forget. I grew up again, this time in my own time. The world of 1884 was familiar, but I wasn't the same. I carried the weight of decades, of lives lived and lost. I avoided mirrors, terrified of what they might hold. I became a writer, telling my story in pieces, disguised as fiction. No one knew the truth, but it didn't matter. I was alive, and the shadows were gone. I searched for the photograph, hoping it was truly destroyed. I never found it, but I felt its absence, a hole in my soul. The mirror's curse had marked me, but I was stronger now. I lived quietly, always watching, always waiting. The shadows might return, but I was ready. Years passed, and I grew old in my own time. The world changed, but I stayed cautious. I never owned a mirror, never trusted a reflection. I heard stories of others, people trapped by objects like mine. I wanted to help, but I was too old, too tired. I wrote my story in full, every detail, hoping it would warn others. I hid the manuscript, unsure if it should see the light of day. The photograph was gone, but its power lingered in my dreams. I saw it sometimes, glowing in the darkness, my 12-year-old face staring back. I knew the shadows were out there, waiting for another chance. But I'd beaten them once. I could do it again. In my final years, I found peace. The shadows were silent, their voices faded to nothing. I lived by the sea, far from the city, far from mirrors. I thought of Daniel, of Clara, of all the people who'd helped me. I hoped they'd found peace too. The photograph was a memory now, its power broken. I wrote one last letter, to be opened after my death. It told my story, the truth of what I'd endured. I wanted the world to know, to be warned. The mirror was gone, but others like it existed. The shadows were patient, and they were hungry. My story was a warning, a beacon for those who might face them. I was ready to let go, to face whatever came next. I died in 1940, an old man in a young boy's life. My manuscript was found, published as a curiosity. People called it fiction, a ghost story for late nights. But some believed. They wrote to my publisher, sharing their own stories of cursed objects, of shadows and mirrors. I'd left a mark, however small. The photograph was never found, and I hope it never will be. But I know it's out there, waiting. The shadows are patient, and they don't forget. My story lives on, a warning to those who listen. If you see a mirror that feels wrong, walk away. If you find a photograph that shouldn't exist, burn it. The shadows are always watching. My story doesn't end with my death. The manuscript spread, its words reaching those who needed them. I like to think I saved someone, somewhere, from a fate like mine. The mirror's curse was broken for me, but others might not be so lucky. The shadows are eternal, their hunger unending. I see them sometimes, in the reflections of my mind. They're weaker now, but they're still there. The photograph was my salvation, but also my burden. I carried it through time, through worlds, through lives. If it still exists, it's a danger to everyone. I hope it's gone, lost to time. But I know better. The shadows don't let go so easily. My story is a warning, a plea to stay vigilant. Now you know my truth. I was the boy who disappeared in a mirror in 1884, and I returned in photograph. I lived lifetimes and moments, fought shadows that no one else could see. The mirror is gone, but its echoes remain. The photograph is out there, a piece of me that I can't reclaim. If you find it, destroy it. Don't let the shadows win. My story is yours now, a warning from a boy who cheated time. Be careful what you see in mirrors. Be careful what you capture in photographs. The shadows are waiting, and they're hungry. I've told you everything. Now it's up to you. Subscribe to this channel to uncover more mysteries like mine, and share this story to warn others. Together, we can keep the shadows at bay. If this story chilled you, if it made you question the reflections around you, hit that subscribe button. Join me as we dive into more mysteries, more truths hidden in the shadows. Share this video, spread the warning, and let's keep the darkness at bay. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and I'll see you in the next tale.